Okay, now we begin our solving solving equations by completing the square. These are some very crude steps that I've written down that you can write down or note. In your packet, there are detailed steps of how to complete the square. But right here, there's very simple, basic bullet statements of how to complete the square. We're going to go through each problem step by step, the same steps, and I would advise you to write through each step. So number one, we have x squared plus 6x minus 40 equals 0. When I'm looking at this, remember that this is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So if you'll notice through the steps, it says move c, which is the value negative 40 right here. And in step 2, it says half of b squared. When I'm looking at b, that's going to be that 6 right there. So I'm looking at my quadratic equation. So here we go. We're going to move c to the right side. So I'm going to move this negative 40 to the other side, or I'm going to add 40 to both sides. Old school says if it's negative on the left, it's going to be positive on the right. Now when you go to right, you have x squared plus 6x, and I'm going to tell you to scoot down, skip a space. You're going to scoot down a little bit, and you're going to skip this space right here, and then that's going to become a positive 40. I'll say scoot and skip a lot, and that's what this means. We're going to leave a spot right here. So we put c on the other side. There's step number 1. Step number 2 says add half of b squared. Always add half of b, in this case that's 3, squared. But now we have an equation. So what you do to the left side of this equation, here's my equal sign, you must also do to the right side of that equation. Do not forget to add it to both sides of this equation. In the previous slides, we didn't have an equation, we had an expression. So now we have to add it to both sides. So just like I did before, this creates the binomial square. Bring down the x squared, positive 3 equals, and this is 40 plus 9, which is 49. So I get to this point, and I have this binomial square. I end up with this binomial square. So I added half of b squared to both sides, came up with the binomial square right here, and I want to undo that square. To remember, to undo a squared, you have to have a square root. So I'm going to take the square root of both sides right here, square root of both sides. The square root cancels that squared, and that just leaves x plus 3. On the right side, I take the square root of 49. But remember, and that's what I have here, that when you take the square root of both sides, it is always going to be plus or minus. And the square root of 49 is 7. Now I just want to solve for the variable. In this case, I'm going to solve for x. So the 3 comes over to the other side, and it goes from positive to negative, or you subtract 3 from both sides. And I would advise you to always write it in front of that plus or minus so that you won't get confused as to what is the plus or minus. In this case, is the 7. So that I have both of those, negative 3, I need to finish it. I have negative 3 plus 7, and I have negative 3 minus 7. So when I solve that, this is 4, and this is negative 10. And that's going to be my answer right there. Let me fix that. So when I write my answer, my final answer is going to be the ordered pair from least to greatest, negative 10, 4. And you can plug that back in and check it. But these are the steps for completing the square. Let's look at another one. Number 2, the first step. The first step is to move c to the other side. Ax squared plus bx, this comes over and becomes a positive 100. Negative on the left means positive on the right. So then we set up x squared plus 20x, scoot down, skip a space, is equal to, and I'm going to go ahead and add that together to 125. The third step is always add half of b squared. Always add half of 20 is 10 squared to both sides. Do not forget that that is to both sides. This creates a binomial square on the left. Here's my binomial square. Take what is squared first, positive 10 next, equals this right here. 10 squared is 100, so 125 plus 100 is 225. To undo that, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So that cancels out that square. The square root and the square cancel each other. And then I have the square root of 25. Square root of 225 is 15. Remember, that will be plus or minus. And then we're going to solve. The 10 comes over, and of course it's going to become negative 10. Positive on the left means negative on the right. And because there are no radicals or there are no imaginary numbers here, I'm going to simplify that. So I have negative 10 plus 15, which is 5. And I have negative 10 minus 15, which is negative 25. So when I write my answer from least to greatest, I have negative 25, 5. We'll continue the next ones on the next slide.